Hi, I'm James Shillinglaw, and I'm here with Matthew Upchurch, a familiar face if you've been watching our interviews. And Matthew, of course, is chairman and CEO of Virtuoso, the luxury travel network. Now, we're talking to Matthew just a couple weeks after Virtuoso staged its first Virtuoso virtual travel week, and we're going to talk to Matthew about that, as well as what the future holds for Virtuoso in the first of a two-part interview. And we're going to find out about all that and more on Insider Travel Report. Now, first of all, Matthew, how are you and where are you? You have a very colorful office. I love that painting in the back.
Yeah, actually, my brother-in-law did that, but I'm back in our home in Fort Worth. We just got back and spending 3.5 weeks in Seattle, and that was really a great break. And by the way, my family, we're a summer travel statistic. We drove 4 hours from Seattle to Cannon Beach, Oregon, and went on a beach holiday that was less than 5 hours drive, and it was great. And by the way, the good news, every single hotel in Cannon Beach was completely full. There was no vacancy.
I've seen it. I mean, these drive vacations all of a sudden, and people are doing it. Now, we have a slight problem with certain states that are putting in quarantines, like my state, New York. So you can certainly go into New England and go and drive around here. But if you're coming from another state, it's difficult. Yeah. But I'm glad you had enjoyed that vacation. It's a perfect way to do it. And of course, you and I are used to jetting around the world and going, crazy places for our vacations and for our work. But it sometimes is nice to just stay home and try something local.
Absolutely.
Now let's talk a little bit about your Virtuoso travel week this week. That was the first to ever go virtual. How many people attended, and what was the kind of feedback you've been getting about it? And I guess the final question about that is, do you think you'll do more virtual events like this in the future?
Well, look, first of all, I just have to be completely vulnerable and say that was, putting that together and the amount of time we did and the way we did it, I'm incredibly proud of our team and what we were able to do. It was a nail biter. There's a lot of pieces, and particularly when you think of the scale of it. We had refined and really done a good job on smaller virtual meetings, and we had done some innovations, but we had over 4,000 people from 96 countries, so all these time zones. And what was really amazing is obviously such a core of what Virtuoso Travel Week is about, as been told by our members and our partners, is the networking. So we were able to actually accomplish 72,768, I remember that number, official appointments of 10 minutes each. And, I have to say that while I'm really proud of our team for having put this together and whatever, the feedback we got was tremendous, but it was really uplifting, quite frankly, because it's also seeing how our network came together, right? Because obviously we put it there, but for example, for the first time ever, we asked everybody, we gave them a 2-week window to make those appointments, and they had to actually choose each other, right? So that's the first time we'd ever done that. But people really love the format. We just got some of the early results, and we actually got the last number I said is 9.3 satisfaction. But the number I'm the most proud of is we asked the question, did this meet your business needs? And it was 99% from partners and 97% from members.
That's great. Well, you may have found something there. Now, I assume, we've talked about this in the past, I mean, just because you do this virtual event doesn't mean you're not going to seek to do live events like, obviously, Symposium and Virtuoso Travel Week in the future. But maybe you were kind of heading into doing a lot of different Virtuoso, sort of expanding the Virtuoso Travel Week concept and having additional weeks as well for in other parts of the world. What's the strategy going to be going forward? And will basically maybe some of them will be replaced by virtual events?
Well, absolutely, because we at our peak, we had done 66 different versions of Virtuoso Travel Week around the world. So we internally, we would call it BTW on tour.
Yeah.
So, whether it was Paris or Berlin or New York or Mexico City or LA or wherever it was, we did that and it was very successful. I actually think that, we got a lot of really good feedback about some of the things that were really a benefit of being virtual. So, for example, when we were together, we had an incredible lineup of professional development speakers, right? But when you're at the physical event, you can only go to so many of them.
Right.
With VTW, we had a lineup of 20 amazing speakers, most of them outside of the industry, by the way, right? External experts. And the beauty is you could watch them anytime. And so people would do it in between. We also have left the entire VTW site is actually up for 30 days post. So even if you weren't able to do it while you were doing that. So we believe very strongly that the future, and by the way, we were already headed that way. The future is going to be a really interesting combination of virtual and physical. And I actually think it's the same thing that's happening with office space. Right now, how many of us have leases that we're sitting there,
Sure.
paying, all this money and trying to figure out what to do. And now we've worked, there was one of the things I talked about in my keynote was this really interesting survey of CEOs. The open question was, what has this pandemic taught you, right? And one of the answers was that working from home works.
It does.
And I think that we're all looking at not only with these events, but I would put the question you've asked about events kind of in the same vein about how do we come back to physical spaces as offices? Because the reality is, there is an optimization of both, right? So if we mix virtual with physical, it allows you to think about, well, how do I optimize the face-to-face to literally leverage what is best about being together? More experiential, more, what are the things that need to be that can make a physical experience even more valuable,
right,
and allow the virtual to do those things that it does best. Same thing. It's like we're talking about, do you maintain offices where everybody commutes in every day to sit in a cubicle or do this? Or do you have a physical space where people come in to do brainstorming activities or this or that, but then they still spend X amount of their time in a virtual environment?
Yeah, no, I think that's what's happening with a lot of different businesses. Realize that a lot of people, and granted, some people get more energized by working collectively in a group and going to an office. I'm not the right person to ask because I've been actually working from remotely. I won't say at home because, you and I are never home on, we're on the road, and I haven't worked in an office per se since 2003. So,
well, and James, and when you say that, James, it actually reminds me. I remember when I did my first keynote to a bunch of travel tech guys, right, years ago, and I remember when you said that, it reminds me of something. The reality is, when all these tech people are looking at their newest this, that, whatever, they forget that two pieces of technology changed our industry: social media and mobility, the ability to work from anywhere. I'm actually a huge believer that one of the reasons our industry has actually elevated in its capacity to attract people, to keep us in the business, is because you can work from everywhere.
Sure.
And social media does give you that ability to transfer your knowledge and where you are, et cetera. So I think it's kind of exciting because, it is about that optimization, and it is about that being able to get out there. And I think it's been a great boon for our profession.
No, I agree. And I don't know what the statistic is now, but I think we're heading somewhere north of 55 to 60% of travel advisors who now work remotely or from home. And of course, when you and I were both talking back in the 90s, we would never thought that was going to happen because, literally home-based agents were kind of frowned upon. But now you have some of your top travel advisors, which we now call them travel advisors. Back then it was travel agents. Have become really, the people that you want to know, because where are they? They're off traveling and exploring the world and trying to get, great right. Experiences for their clients.
Well, in fact, it flipped. The professionals were all in the office and they still, right? But it was because home-based meant hobbyists.
Right.
Well, what happened was the opposite happened. If you were to try to convince a former lawyer, a Josh Alexander, famous in our network, right? Former lawyer or somebody like that, say, oh, by the way, come be a travel advisor, but you're going to be tethered to your cubicle with a GDS for whatever, and you'll never get to travel. No, maybe a couple. Versus, oh, how would you like to come travel the world, have where you stay that you put on social media, generate sales, and be able to work from anywhere in the world? Well, that's, the travel advisor profession has actually been at the leading edge of the digital nomad revolution.
Yeah. Absolutely.
You're the ultimate digital nomad.
I know. Well, we are getting that way. Now, let's talk a little bit about, even before the COVID-19 crisis hit back in February, you had sort of committed to change and restructure Virtuoso. Yeah. What have you accomplished so far, and what's still to come in terms of how you're going to evolve the organization?
Yeah. Well, as you know, I don't like to stand still. You know me long enough about that.
Yeah, I know. No, you just like to sit at home and watch TV and just no.
But what's interesting is I truly have to say that a lot of what we as a team had been working on coming into 2020. Right. In fact, I gave my keynote at our forum in Vegas in January for the U.S.-Canada Forum. A lot of that has actually helped me. It's helped me because it was about transformation. And to refer to that CEO survey again, right? I actually use that again. I talked about that in my keynote because one of the one answer that I love was, a business cannot wait for the transformation it knows it needs. Mm-hmm. So one of the things I've been talking about lately is whenever you have a major shift, a major disruption, because I'm tired of talking about unprecedented. I'm tired of the word crisis, so I'm going to call it a major disruption, a major shift. But whenever you have a major shift, like of this magnitude, the reality is that it actually accelerates existing trends. Mm-hmm. Now, that could be a trend of something. That could be a trend of something growing faster, or something diminishing faster. So, for example, I'll give you this interesting statistic. The statistic is that Professor Scott Galway of NYU Marketing, right? Online digital commerce grew 10% in over a decade. Then it grew 10% in a year. It grew 10% in the first 8 weeks of this pandemic. Mm-hmm. Now, you automatically, it's why Amazon is worth another $500 billion in this situation. Sure. But also, let's not lose face of the fact that last year at Virtuoso Week, one of the things I said is we need to leverage technology to augment and amplify your humanity, which is what you have as an advantage over other ways of distribution. And what's funny is one of the things that I suggested was use more video conference.
Right.
Well, check that box.
Yeah.
Because this crisis has given us the biggest, crash course in how to do this. So the whole realignment of our team was really about how to take all the different things that Virtuoso has been doing and how to become an organization that can create better products that are more easily configurable to the incredible diversity of the way our members around the world express their own way of doing business and therefore the way in which they attract customers. So we felt that we needed to work with the example, and it really falls into three major categories. We want to innovate in consumer engagement. Mm-hmm. We want to continue to innovate in network engagement. How do we better engage that, right? And then how do we build that on a digital platform that augments human connection?
No, and then that's what you've done now. Of course, because of the crisis, we won't call it that anymore. But you've had to obviously, sort of reduce the number of people you have on staff. Is this something where you're really going to be a leaner organization now? Do you think going forward, or will you just figure out maybe you do need more people for certain things? I don't know.
Well, I mean, look, this is painful for everybody. Those were some of the hardest things I've ever had to do. There, some of the people that are still on our furlough, for example. I mean, I started my talk basically saying my heart goes out to it. I mean, let's not forget, we're still looking at, a massive. This is the tale of two economies. We're talking about the airlines right now, talking about American just said having to let go of 20,000 people
right,
if the government doesn't do something. So the way I'll answer that is, obviously, you're always trying to reorganize an organization to be more effective. But for us, it's about how do we grow through the opportunities? What are going to be the opportunities to transform ourselves? So that's why I was saying, as coming in, how do we want to actually bring more people in, but we want to bring more people back in order for us to spend our time in innovating on those things that we thought were going to be the growth areas, like, for example, the consumer engagement piece. We're working on a brand new Virtuoso.com, Wanderlust, a lot of different things that we're doing in helping our network.
Now, obviously, it always seemed to me in the past that the two big things that Virtuoso did, aside from this kind of networking function, which was amazing, you had the best people coming into these events, but really events and marketing were your two kind of pillars that seem to be now. Is that going to continue in the future, or are you going to focus on different things and different services and support for your travel agency members?
No, first of all, to me, the foundational basis of Virtuoso is co-creation, right? I mean, I sit here before you today because when we purchased Allied Travel in 1986, I created the member advisory board, and everything we've ever done here has come from that perspective, right? So the whole ability of the organization to co-create and to share with each other is the foundation of it. It is our lane, though, for example, to create, we see, for example, that one of the most important things that Virtuoso does starts at building a consumer and industry preference for Virtuoso. So we want that. That's the whole point of the Virtuoso brand. When we were thinking about changing our name back in 1999, I didn't wake up one day and say, oh, gee, we need a new name, right? That was born out of the problem we were having in 1999, 2 years after Expedia and Travelocity was born and the airline commission cuts, was that everybody, the conventional wisdom was that travel agents were dinosaurs and going away. And yet I looked at these incredible API members at the time saying, people are mixing apples and oranges. So the whole point of the brand was to create and put a spotlight. What is a trusted travel advisor? Right? So what I want to make sure is marketing is not just about promotion. Marketing is about understanding the market. What's the consumer psyche? What's the consumer mental model about what consumers value? How do you merchandise that better? The promotional aspects of it through both print and digital are there to support that. So marketing is absolutely our lane. And I think the most important thing about marketing going forward which is embedded in our Wanderlust innovation, for example, is that marketing becomes way more a two-way street, much more engaging. You want the consumer to engage with you in such a way that it becomes an ongoing engagement, so that it's not just kind of this one way, just dumping things on you.
Well, actually, and you keep mentioning Wanderlust, which was, you've been, rolling that out now since a year ago as some way to interact with your customers, with your luxury travel buyers, and it still is a major, there's a major push on Wanderlust. Talk a little bit about that, the importance of Wanderlust, and other developing technologies to Virtuoso's future. Right.
Well, specifically on Wanderlust, the original version of Wanderlust was actually focusing on the ability to help people create multi-trip, multi-year travel plans. Kind of like the idea was the fact that, why would you go to a financial advisor, right, to have a conscious plan to optimize your money, but not have somebody in your life to help you optimize your most valuable non-renewable asset, your free leisure time? And that was not born, again, of some sort of I just woke up someday and had a great idea. It came from observing and learning from our incredible advisors. And one of the things that all the very best advisors, that we observed, was that the really best advisors were never booking one trip at a time. I've said this time and time again. Our consumer research for the last 15 years has shown that the single thing a consumer tells us differentiates, because you were talking about what's the difference between a travel agent and an advisor, right? The single thing that differentiates a trusted advisor from a transactional travel agent. And by the way, a lot of people value a really good transactional travel agent.
Sure.
That's not saying anything wrong. It's like, hey, I've got somebody that gets it right, is there if something happens, blah, blah, blah. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you're going to go into this trusted advisor role, it's the conversation after the trip in the way that the customer wants to do that, because that becomes a learning opportunity. So the original concept around Wanderlust was about creating a platform and a digital tool that allows for there to be a more dynamic and fluid conversation with a traveler, their spouse, their family, and all that to be able to put together these plans. But when the crisis hit, Wanderlust always had two elements. It had the front end, which was what I call the gamification of your travel dreams, how to make it fun and easy to kind of like, ooh, I'd like to go there, I'd like to do this, etc. And then the back end of it was the ability to take all that dreaming and actually turn it into something. Well, we were leading with trying to go to customers that wanted the longer term planning. But what we realized, and we pivoted in March, is that what we really wanted to do now that we were shutting down is how do we actually get out there and give our members around the world a tool that makes it fun to dream at home and do that. Because the other thing that's happened, and I know it was going to be one of your questions at one point, is some members have said that this situation is almost like somebody came in and deleted all the interest categories in the database, because people are like, do I want to go long haul? Do I want to do this? Do I still want to do that? You know what I mean? So learning about that. So this also allows us to re-engage with customers in a very proactive way. And it gives you permission to send them something that's fun, that's engaging, and it gives you permission to be able to talk about travel because it's the dreaming stage.
Absolutely. Well, Matthew, we're going to, on part two of this interview, we're going to talk a little bit about bigger issues with luxury travel and travel in general and how COVID-19 has affected this. But I want to thank you for taking the time now to talk about where Virtuoso itself is going. And also, obviously, the success you've just recently had with this Virtuoso Travel Week, the virtual form. And I thought it went very well. I thought it was well produced, and I didn't spend a lot of time in the one-on-ones, of course, but I only hear some good things. So congratulations on that meeting. Everybody's doing these virtual shows now, and you were one of the first, if not the first, to be out there. So you didn't even have the benefit of taking a look at what everybody else did. And now we're experiencing that. Obviously right now as we're speaking, the ASTA is holding its ASTA Global Live event, and you were part of that. And yeah, everybody has a different version of it, and everybody has a new technology. So we're going to see how that all plays out. But again, thanks very much, and we'll look forward to seeing you in part two.
Thank you, James.
I'm James Shillinglaw, and this is Insider Travel Report.